Security guards blocked the old man until the Pentagon called directly. The National Security Agency headquarters rises from the Maryland landscape like a black glass fortress. 2 million square feet of secrets. 18,000 employees with clearances most Americans don't know exist. The nerve center of America's signals intelligence operations, where every electronic whisper on the planet is captured, analyzed, and filed away. The security checkpoint at the main entrance processes 3,000 people on an average day. Badges are scanned, faces are matched, credentials are verified against databases that update in real time. Nothing gets through without authorization. Nothing. It's 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday in November when the old man approaches. He walks slowly, deliberately, using a wooden cane that looks older than most of the guards. His clothes are simple: khaki pants, a gray cardigan over a white button-down shirt, leather shoes that have been resoled more than once. He wears a tweed flat cap that shadows his face. He looks like someone's grandfather, someone who got lost on the way to the grocery store and somehow ended up at one of the most secure facilities on Earth. Officer Derek Williams spots him first. 26 years old, former Marine, 3 years with NSA security. He's seen confused civilians before, lost tourists, curious locals, the occasional conspiracy theorist who thinks they can just walk in and expose government secrets. This looks like another one. "Sir," Williams steps forward, hand raised. "Sir, this is a restricted federal facility. I'm going to need you to stop right there." The old man stops, looks at Williams with pale blue eyes that seem too sharp for his weathered face. "Good morning, young man." "Sir, do you have business here?" "I do." "Can I see your identification and credentials?" The old man reaches into his cardigan pocket. Williams's hand moves toward his sidearm. Instinct, not threat assessment. But the old man just pulls out a wallet. Old leather. Worn smooth from decades of handling. He removes a card, hands it to Williams. It's a driver's license. Virginia. Walter Eugene Mercer. DOB, NAR 4/15/1934. 90 years old. "Mr. Mercer, this is a valid ID, but it doesn't give you access to this facility. Do you have an appointment? Is someone expecting you?" "I don't have an appointment, but someone should be expecting me." "Who?" "I don't know his name. Whoever's in charge now." Williams exchanges a glance with his partner, Officer Tanya Brooks. She's already reaching for her radio. "Sir, you can't enter this facility without proper authorization. If you don't have an appointment or credentials, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I understand your position." The old man's voice is calm, patient. "But I need you to call someone. Tell them Walter Mercer is here. Tell them it's about Operation Nightshade." Williams frowns. "Operation what?" "Nightshade. Nightshade. They'll know what it means." "Sir, I can't just call the director because someone shows up with a code word." "It's not a code word. It's a program designation." The old man's eyes sharpen. "A program that officially doesn't exist. One that was terminated in 1989. I was part of it." Brooks steps closer, radio in hand. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us to the security office. We can sort this out there." "I'd rather not. My knees aren't what they used to be." "Sir, it's not optional." The old man sighs, a small sound, heavy with something Williams can't quite identify. Resignation, maybe, or exhaustion. "Very well, but please, make the call, Nightshade. Someone will respond." The security office is small, utilitarian, designed for exactly this purpose, holding people who don't belong until someone figures out what to do with them. Walter Mercer sits in a plastic chair, cane across his knees. He hasn't asked for water, hasn't complained, just sits with the patience of a man who's waited in far worse places than this. Williams watches him through the observation window. There's something off about this guy. Not dangerous necessarily, just wrong. He doesn't act like a confused old man. He acts like someone who knows exactly where he is and exactly what he's doing. Brooks finishes her call and approaches Williams. "I ran Nightshade through our database. Nothing. Checked with the operations center. Nothing. Whatever he's talking about, it's not in any system I can access. So he's making it up." "Probably. We should call local police. Have them take him to—" "Wait." Williams is still watching through the window. "Did you notice how he sits?" "What do you mean?" His posture, back straight, hands visible on his knees, eyes tracking everyone who enters or exits. Brooks looks. "So?" That's how I was trained to sit in interrogation environments. Keep your hands visible. Stay alert. Don't give anything away. He's 90 years old. I know, but that posture isn't something you learn from watching TV. That's institutional, military, or intelligence. They're interrupted by the door opening. Their supervisor, Captain Marcus Rodriguez, enters with the expression Williams has never seen before: concern, deep, genuine concern. Williams, Brooks, step outside. Sir, now. They step into the hallway. Rodriguez closes the door behind them. What did he say to you? Exactly. He asked us to call someone about an operation called Nightshade. Said it was a program that was terminated in 1989. Said he was part of it. Rodriguez goes pale. Actually pale, the blood draining from his face. Did anyone else hear this? Just us. Sir, what's going on? I need you to stay here. Don't let anyone else talk to him. Don't discuss what he said with anyone. Is that clear? Yes, sir, but... Rodriguez is already walking away, phone pressed to his ear. Williams catches fragments. Yes, sir. Nightshade, I understand. Immediately. What the hell is going on? Brooks whispers. Williams doesn't answer. He's watching Rodriguez disappear around a corner, moving faster than he's ever seen the captain move. Whatever Nightshade is, it just scared the hell out of their boss. 45 minutes pass. Walter Mercer doesn't move, doesn't ask for anything. Just sits with his cane across his knees, eyes tracking movement through the observation window. Williams brings him water anyway. The old man accepts it with a nod of thanks, but doesn't drink. Mr. Mercer, is there anyone we can call for you? Family? No family. Friends? The friends I had are mostly dead. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. They died doing what they believed in. That's more than most people can say. Williams hesitates. Sir, can I ask you something? You can ask. What was Nightshade, really? Mercer looks at him, those pale blue eyes seeing something Williams can't see. Memories, maybe. Ghosts. It was a lie, son. A very effective lie. The kind that saved lives but cost souls. Before Williams can respond, the door opens. Captain Rodriguez enters, followed by two men in suits Williams doesn't recognize. Their credentials identify them as NSA senior staff, but Williams has never seen them before. Behind them is a woman in a military uniform, Army, Colonel's eagles on her shoulders. And behind her, visible through the doorway, are 4 more security personnel. Not NSA, different uniforms, different bearing. The Colonel approaches Mercer. Mr. Mercer. Colonel? I'm Colonel Patricia Reeves, Deputy Director for Operations. That position didn't exist when I was active. Things have changed. So I've heard. Reeves glances at Rodriguez. Captain, I need this room cleared. Officers Williams and Brooks, you're dismissed. What you've seen and heard today is classified at the highest levels. You'll be contacted for debriefing. Until then, you will discuss this with no one. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am. Williams and Brooks leave. The door closes behind them. Reeves sits down across from Mercer. We didn't expect you to come here. I didn't expect to have a reason to. Your files were supposed to be destroyed in '89, when the program was terminated. Some files were, others weren't. Reeves's expression doesn't change, but something shifts in her eyes. What do you want, Mr. Mercer? I want to speak to whoever's in charge of the current operation in the South China Sea. Silence. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Signals Intercept Platform, Mobile, operating in the area around the Spratly Islands. Mercer's voice is still calm, but there's steel beneath it now. I know because I helped design the original concept, 43 years ago. That's impossible. You've been retired, erased, forgotten. Yes. Mercer leans forward slightly. But I still have friends, Colonel, and those friends tell me you're about to make a mistake, the same mistake we made in 1981. Reeves is very still. What mistake? You're going to get people killed unless you let me help. The conference room is on the 7th floor. No windows, no recording devices, or none that are active. A table, chairs, and walls that are probably shielded against every form of electronic surveillance known to man. Walter Mercer sits at one end, Colonel Reeves sits at the other. Between them are 2 NSA analysts who look barely out of college, and a man in civilian clothes who hasn't introduced himself, but carries the quiet authority of someone very senior. Before we begin, the unnamed man says, I need to understand how you have information about current operations. I receive communications from former colleagues, unofficial channels. That's a security violation. Yes, it is. Mercer doesn't flinch. Do you want to discuss operational security, or do you want to prevent your people from dying? Silence. Reeves clears her throat. Tell us what you know. Mercer reaches into his cardigan pocket, removes a folded piece of paper, old, yellow, covered in handwritten notes. Your signals platform in the South China Sea. It's been tracking Chinese naval communications for the past 3 months. Last week, it detected something unusual, a pattern in the traffic that suggested the Chinese know you're there. One of the analysts, a young woman with sharp features, leans forward. How could you possibly know that? Because I've seen this pattern before. 1981, Operation Cerberus. We had a mobile intercept platform in the Sea of Japan, tracking Soviet submarine communications. Same setup, same concept. What happened? The Soviets figured out we were there. They fed us false information for 6 weeks while they repositioned their actual submarines. When we finally realized what was happening, we'd lost track of 3 missile boats. The intelligence failure nearly triggered a war. The unnamed man's expression darkens. That operation isn't in any, because it was erased, along with everything else about Nightshade. What exactly was Nightshade? Mercer is quiet for a moment. When he speaks, his voice is distant, remembering. Nightshade was a joint NSA-CIA program, launched in 1962. The purpose was to develop deep-cover operatives who could function indefinitely in hostile environments, not agents who could pass as foreign nationals, agents who would become foreign nationals. New identities, new histories, new lives. Like illegals programs? Deeper than illegals, we weren't planted operatives maintaining cover. We were ghosts, people who officially ceased to exist. Our real identities were destroyed. Birth certificates, social security records, military files, everything. Why? Because the operations we ran couldn't have fingerprints. We operated in places where American involvement would have caused international incidents. We did things that could never be traced back to the United States government. The room is very quiet. How many of you were there? Reeves asks. At peak, 47. By 1989, when the program was terminated, 11. Most of the others had been killed, captured, or burned. And the 11 survivors? Scattered, given new identities, again, and told to disappear. We were promised that if we ever surfaced, if we ever revealed what we'd done, we'd be disavowed, treated as rogues, prosecuted or eliminated. But you surfaced anyway, today. Because I watched good people die for this country for 23 years, and I'm watching it happen again. Mercer's jaw tightens. Your South China Sea operation. How many people on that platform? Silence. Colonel, how many? Reeves glances at the unnamed man. He nods. 12, she says. 4 NSA technicians, 6 Navy specialists, 2 civilian contractors. 12 people, sitting on a platform that the Chinese have almost certainly identified, being fed false data that they're happily reporting as genuine intelligence. Mercer's voice hardens. How long until you realize it's a trap? How long until those 12 people pay for your failure to see the pattern? You can't know the Chinese have identified. I know patterns. I spent 23 years learning to read patterns in intelligence data. The pattern I'm seeing now is identical to what we saw in 1981. And I'm telling you, if you don't extract those people within the next 72 hours, you're going to lose them. The next 3 hours are a blur of classified briefings and tense conversations. Mercer walks them through the 1981 failure, the intelligence assumptions that proved wrong, the signals that were missed, the cost in lives and strategic position. He draws parallels to the current operation with a precision that unsettles the analysts. The Chinese are sophisticated, he explains. They don't just identify surveillance, they weaponize it. They feed you exactly what you want to hear while preparing countermeasures. By the time you realize you've been played, it's too late. How do we verify your analysis? The unnamed man asks. You can't, not with signals intelligence. They've contaminated your data stream. You need human intelligence, someone on the inside who can confirm whether your platform has been compromised. We don't have assets in that area. You do, you just don't know about them. Reeves frowns. What do you mean? Mercer reaches into his pocket again. This time he produces a small leather notebook, worn almost to disintegration. When Nightshade was terminated, we were supposed to surrender all operational materials. I kept some things. Insurance. including contact protocols for assets I developed over 23 years. Those assets would be old, like me, but some of them are still alive. Some of them are still in positions of access. He opens the notebook. I have a contact in Beijing, former military intelligence. Retired now, but he still has friends. If anyone knows whether your platform has been identified, it's him. You want us to reactivate a 40-year-old intelligence network to verify current operations? I want you to use every tool available to prevent 12 Americans from dying. Mercer closes the notebook. That's what I want. The room falls silent. The unnamed man stands. I need to make some calls. He leaves. Reeves watches him go, then turns to Mercer. Who is he? You don't know? He showed up an hour after you arrived, took over the meeting without introducing himself. Mercer almost smiles. Some things haven't changed then. The people who matter most are always the ones without names. 2 hours later, the unnamed man returns. His expression is different now. Something has shifted. Mr. Mercer, I've spoken with the Director of National Intelligence and with certain other parties who remember you. I'm sure they do. They've authorized a limited reactivation of your contact protocols. You'll work with our team to reach out to your Beijing asset. If your analysis is correct, if the platform has been compromised, we'll execute an emergency extraction. And if I'm wrong, then you'll have wasted a great deal of important people's time. The unnamed man pauses. But between us, no one who remembers Nightshade thinks you're wrong. You people had a reputation for being right when everyone else was wrong. That's why they erased us. We were too right too often. Made the conventional analysts look bad. Politics never changes. No, it doesn't. Mercer stands. His joints protest, but he ignores them. I'll need a secure communications terminal and privacy. My contact won't respond if he thinks anyone else is listening. That can be arranged. One more thing. Yes? When this is over, if I'm right, I want something in return. What? I want the names of my colleagues restored, the ones who died, the ones who gave everything and received nothing. I want their families to know what they sacrificed. The unnamed man is silent for a long moment. That's not my decision to make. Then take it to whoever can make it. That's my price. 40 years of silence is enough. The communications room is a tomb of technology. Screens everywhere. Equipment that probably cost more than Walter Mercer's entire life savings. And at the center, a single terminal connected to a network that officially doesn't exist. Mercer sits at the terminal, fingers resting on the keyboard. He hasn't typed anything yet, just sits, eyes closed, remembering. The last time he used these protocols was 1988, 36 years ago, a lifetime. Colonel Reeves stands in the doorway. Mr. Mercer, is there a problem? No problem, just remembering. Remembering what? The last time I talked to Chen, December 1988. He'd just gotten word that his daughter was accepted to university in Shanghai, first in her family to attend college. He was so proud. Chen is your Beijing contact? Chen Wei-Lin. We met in 1971. He was a young officer in the PLA Signals Division. I was posing as Ia, a Canadian telecommunications consultant. We developed a relationship. He was an asset. He was a friend who happened to provide intelligence that saved American lives. Mercer opens his eyes. That's what they never understood about Nightshade. We weren't just gathering intelligence. We were building relationships, trust, the kind of trust that survives decades. He begins to type. The protocol is complex, a series of coded phrases that will route through multiple networks before reaching their destination. If Chen is still alive, still monitoring the channels they established decades ago, he'll respond. If not, Mercer tries not to think about if not. How long until you get a response? Reeves asks. Hours, days, maybe never. Mercer leans back. Chen is 87 years old, if he's even still alive. And if he's not, then we find another way. There's always another way. But Mercer's voice lacks conviction. Chen was his best contact, his most trusted source. If Chen can't help them, the terminal beeps. Mercer straightens, stares at the screen. A message, 4 characters, Chinese. What does it say? Reeves asks. Mercer's hands are trembling, not from age, from something else. Relief, disbelief. It says, old friend. He types a response, coded phrases that only Chen will understand. questions disguised as pleasantries, requests hidden in small talk. The conversation unfolds slowly over the next 2 hours, each message carefully crafted, each response carefully decoded. Finally, Chen sends a longer message. Mercer reads it, face paling. "What is it?" Reeves presses. "Your platform." Chen confirms it's been identified. Chinese naval intelligence has been tracking it for 6 weeks. They've been feeding it false data, troop movements, communications, strategic assessments, all manufactured. How does he know? Because his nephew is a junior officer in the unit running the deception operation. Mercer's voice is heavy. Chen says there's more. The Chinese aren't just planning to expose the platform, they're planning to capture it. A special operations team is being prepared. The operation is scheduled for... He checks the message again. "Tomorrow night, 2300 hours local time." Reeves goes white. "That's less than 30 hours. Yes, we need to extract those people now. Yes." Reeves is already moving, barking orders into her phone. The room erupts into controlled chaos, personnel rushing in, screens flickering with new data, voices overlapping in urgent conversation. Mercer sits at the terminal, watching the chaos unfold around him. Chen's final message still glows on the screen. "Be careful, old friend." The young ones always think they know better, but patterns don't change. Only the faces do. The next 12 hours are a masterclass in crisis management. The extraction plan comes together piece by piece. Navy assets in the region are repositioned. A submarine is diverted from its patrol route. Communications protocols are updated to maintain operational security. Mercer is present for all of it, offering insights from his decades of experience. Where to position the extraction vessel, how to time the approach, what signals to watch for. The Chinese will be monitoring all standard frequencies, he advises. You need to use methods they won't expect, such as low-frequency burst transmissions, timed to coincide with natural electromagnetic interference. We used the technique in the 80s. It's old enough that modern signals intelligence probably doesn't account for it. That's insane. It worked in 1983. It'll work now. The unnamed man, Mercer has learned his name is Sullivan, though he suspects it's not real, watches these exchanges with growing respect. "You're remarkable, Mr. Mercer, 90 years old and still thinking 3 steps ahead. I've had a lot of practice. Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask." "Why now? After all these years? Why come out of the shadows?" Mercer is quiet for a moment. "I received a letter 2 months ago, from Chen, the old-fashioned kind, paper, envelope, postage. He'd heard rumors about your operation in the South China Sea. He was worried, said it reminded him of patterns we'd seen before. So you started investigating. I started remembering, and the more I remembered, the more convinced I became that history was repeating itself, that someone needed to intervene. You could have sent an anonymous tip, a letter, anything that didn't require you to expose yourself. Anonymous tips get ignored, filed away by analysts who don't understand context." Mercer meets Sullivan's eyes. "I spent 23 years being invisible. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to step into the light. Even knowing what it might cost you. I'm 90 years old, Mr. Sullivan. What can they cost me that I haven't already lost?" At 2200 hours local time, 1 hour before the scheduled Chinese operation, the extraction begins. Mercer watches from a command center thousands of miles away. Screens show satellite imagery, signals intercepts, the blue dots representing the USS Nevada submarine approaching the platform's last known position. The platform has gone dark, deliberate, part of the extraction protocol. "Contact in 15 minutes, a technician announces. Reeves stands beside Mercer. "Your intel was accurate. We intercepted communications from the Chinese Special Operations Team. They were 40 minutes from launch when we went dark. They'll know something's wrong. Let them. By the time they respond, our people will be gone." The minutes crawl by. Each one feels like an hour. Then, "Contact confirmed. Personnel transfer in progress." Mercer lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "How long until they're clear?" 20 minutes to complete transfer, 30 more to reach safe distance. "And the Chinese response?" Reeves checks another screen. "They're mobilizing, but they're too slow. They didn't expect us to react this quickly. They expected you to follow the pattern, trust your data, assume everything was fine. And if you hadn't shown up?" Mercer doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. They both know what would have happened. 12 Americans captured, an international incident, lives destroyed. Because someone trusted the wrong data. At 22:47 hours, the confirmation comes. All personnel safely aboard the Nevada. Platform scuttled to prevent capture. No casualties. The command center erupts in quiet celebration. Handshakes, relieved exhales. The particular joy of disaster averted. Mercer sits alone, apart from the celebration. His hands are shaking again. The tremor he's learned to hide, finally released. Reeves approaches. "Mr. Mercer, we owe you a debt." "You owe me nothing. I did what anyone would have done. Anyone didn't have the knowledge, the contacts, the willingness to risk everything." She sits down beside him. "You saved 12 lives tonight, probably prevented a war. I prevented one mistake. There will be others." That's a dark way to look at it. It's a realistic way. Mercer looks at her. "The patterns never change, Colonel, only the faces. 20 years from now, someone else will be sitting in a command center, watching another extraction, wondering how they almost got it wrong. Maybe, but tonight we got it right." She pauses. "And your request about the names?" "Yes?" Sullivan passed it up the chain. "I don't know what will happen, but people are listening. For the first time in 40 years, people are listening." Mercer nods slowly. "It's not enough, but it's something." "I'd like to go home now," he says, "if that's acceptable." "Of course. We'll have a car take you wherever you need to go. And then we'll be in touch. This isn't over, Mr. Mercer. You've proven your value in ways we can't ignore. I'm 90 years old. I'm not sure how much value I have left. More than you know." Reeves stands. "More than you know." 3 months later, Walter Mercer stands in Arlington National Cemetery in a section reserved for unmarked graves. The headstones here have no names, no dates, just numbers, anonymous markers for anonymous dead. Intelligence officers, covert operatives, people who served their country in ways that could never be acknowledged. 23 of them are from Nightshade. Mercer knows each one, remembers their faces, their voices, the operations they ran together, the sacrifices they made. He's been coming here every year for 40 years, alone, unacknowledged, just an old man visiting graves that officially don't exist. But today is different. Today, he's not alone. Behind him, a small group has gathered. Sullivan in a dark suit, Colonel Reeves in dress uniform, and others, faces Mercer doesn't recognize, but whose presence speaks to something changing. Sullivan steps forward. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming. I come every year, you know that." "Yes, but today is different." Sullivan gestures, and an aide approaches carrying a wooden box. 3 months ago, you prevented a disaster. You saved 12 lives and potentially prevented an international crisis. That service deserves recognition. "I don't need recognition." "No, you don't. But your colleagues do." The aide opens the box. Inside are 23 small bronze plaques, each one engraved with a name: Harold Jensen, Margaret Okonkwo, Thomas Chen, Diana Rothberg. Names. Mercer hasn't spoken aloud in decades. "We can't change the headstones," Sullivan explains. "The official records remain sealed. But these plaques, these names, they'll be archived, preserved, known to those who have the clearance to know." Mercer stares at the plaques. His eyes are wet. It's not enough. No, it isn't, but it's a start. One by one, Sullivan places the plaques at the base of each unmarked grave, a name returned to an anonymous stone, a life acknowledged, even if only in whispers. When he reaches the 23rd grave, he pauses. "This one," he says. "The records say you knew her." Mercer approaches. The plaque reads, "Catherine Shaw." "Kathy!" Mercer's voice is barely a whisper. "She was my partner for 6 years. We operated in East Germany together. She was captured in 1979. The Stasi—" He can't finish. "She never broke," Sullivan says quietly. "We know that now. Whatever they did to her, she never gave up a single name, a single operation. She died protecting us, protecting all of us. Yes, she did." Mercer kneels, painfully, his old joint screaming, and places his hand on the grave marker. "I'm sorry it took so long, Kathy. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." He stays there for a long moment. Then, slowly, he rises. Sullivan hands him the final plaque. "Catherine Shaw. Would you like to place this one?" Mercer takes it, studies the name. Then, with infinite care, he places it at the base of the unmarked stone. Rest easy, he says. You're remembered now. After the ceremony, Mercer sits on a bench overlooking the cemetery. The November wind is cold, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and distant rain. The graves stretch out before him, rows of white stones marking the honored dead, and among them, 23 unmarked graves that now have names. Reeves joins him on the bench. How do you feel? Old, tired. Mercer almost smiles. Satisfied, I think. For the first time in 40 years. Sullivan told me something about your future. My future? I'm 90 years old. I don't have much future left. He wants to establish a consulting role, unofficial of course. But your knowledge, the patterns you recognize, the contacts you've maintained, it's too valuable to waste. I'm not sure I have anything left to offer. You saved 12 lives 3 months ago, with one phone call and a lifetime of knowledge. Reeves turns to him. There are young officers in my command who have access to more data than you could have imagined in 1962. But they don't know how to see. They don't understand patterns. They need teachers. Teachers. People who can show them that intelligence isn't just data. It's context, relationships, trust. Mercer considers this. The idea of teaching, of passing on what he knows, hadn't occurred to him. He'd assumed his knowledge would die with him, another secret buried with the rest. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. They sit in silence for a while, watching the cemetery. Can I tell you something? Reeves asks. Of course. My grandfather was in intelligence, OSS during World War II, then CIA after. He never talked about his work, couldn't. But I remember how he carried himself, the weight of secrets, the loneliness of knowing things you can't share. It's a heavy burden. He died when I was 16. I found a letter in his belongings afterward, addressed to me. It said, "The work matters even when no one knows, especially when no one knows." Mercer nods slowly. He was right. I know, but it took me years to understand. Reeves looks at him. You've carried that weight for 60 years, longer than most people live. I don't know how you did it. One day at a time, one secret at a time. Mercer's gaze drifts to the unmarked graves, and by remembering that every secret has a face, a name, a life that was lived before it was erased. Will you tell their stories, if we set up the consulting role? Their stories aren't mine to tell, but I can tell what they taught me, what they sacrificed to teach me. Maybe that's enough. It's more than enough. 6 months later, Walter Mercer stands in a secure conference room at an undisclosed location. 20 young intelligence officers sit before him, fresh faces, eager eyes, the next generation of analysts, operatives, and decision-makers. He doesn't have slides, doesn't have handouts, just himself and 60 years of experience. Good morning, my name is Walter Mercer. Most of you have never heard of me. That's by design. For the past 60 years, I've been a ghost, a man without a history, without records, without official existence. He pauses. Lets that sink in. Today, I'm going to teach you something that isn't in any manual, something you won't learn from data analysis or signals intercepts or satellite imagery. What's that, sir? One of the young officers asks. Patterns. The patterns that repeat across decades. The mistakes that intelligence agencies make over and over again because they forget the lessons of the past. He begins to pace slowly, his cane tapping on the floor. In 1981, we lost track of 3 Soviet missile submarines because we trusted data that had been contaminated. In 2024, we almost lost 12 Americans for the same reason. 43 years apart, different technology, different adversaries, same pattern. He stops, looks at each of them in turn. Your job isn't just to gather intelligence. It's to understand it, to see the patterns that data alone can't reveal, to ask the questions that algorithms don't know to ask. A young woman raises her hand. Sir, how do we learn to see patterns when the data is so complex? By studying history, by talking to people who were there, by understanding that every piece of intelligence has a human source, someone who chose to share information, for reasons that may not be obvious. He returns to the front of the room. I spent 23 years building relationships with sources around the world. Some of them were enemies, some became friends. All of them taught me something important. Intelligence isn't about data. It's about trust, about understanding why people do what they do. Is that still possible? Another officer asks. In an era of cyber operations and AI analysis? It's more important than ever. Machines can process data. They can't understand motivation. They can't build trust. They can't recognize when something feels wrong, even when all the data says it's right. Mercer moves to a window. Outside, the world goes on. Cars moving, people walking, the ordinary machinery of life. Somewhere out there, right now, someone has information that could save American lives. They're not going to share it with a computer. They're going to share it with a person they trust. He turns back to the class. Your job is to become that person, to build relationships that survive decades, to earn trust that outlasts administrations and policy changes and shifting priorities. And if we make mistakes, you will make mistakes. Everyone does. The question is whether you learn from them. He pauses. 40 years ago, I made mistakes that cost lives. I've spent every day since then trying to honor those lives by preventing the same mistakes from happening again. Has it worked? 3 months ago, 12 Americans came home because I recognized a pattern I learned from mistakes made 43 years earlier. Mercer's voice is quiet but firm. So yes, it works. Not perfectly, not always, but enough. He checks his watch. That's all for today. Next week, we'll discuss specific case studies, operations that succeeded, operations that failed, and why the difference often came down to human judgment rather than technical capability. He gathers his notes and prepares to leave. The young woman who asked the first question approaches him. Sir, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Was it worth it? The sacrifices you made? The life you gave up? Mercer considers the question, thinks about 60 years of secrets, a wife who never knew what he really did, children he barely saw, friends who died in shadows that will never be illuminated. There's a cemetery in Arlington, he says finally. 23 unmarked graves, people who gave everything they had, their names, their histories, their lives, to protect this country. They'll never be honored publicly, never be remembered by anyone except the few of us who knew them. That seems sad. It is sad, but it's also meaningful. They mattered. What they did mattered, even if the world never knows. He meets her eyes. Was it worth it? I don't know, but I know this. Given the choice, I'd do it all again. Because some things are more important than being remembered. Some things are worth disappearing for. He walks toward the door. See you next week. Walter Mercer taught at the unnamed facility for 3 more years. His classes were always full. Young officers fought for seats. His insights, drawn from 6 decades of experience, became legend within the intelligence community. He never wrote a memoir, never gave public interviews. Even after his death, his story remained classified. But his students remembered. They remembered the old man who walked into NSA headquarters without credentials and walked out having saved 12 lives. They remembered his lessons about patterns and trust and the human element that no algorithm can replicate. And they passed those lessons on to the next generation and the next. Walter Mercer died on a spring morning in 2027, aged 93. He was found in his apartment in Alexandria, sitting in his favorite chair, facing the window. On his lap was a letter, old paper, yellowed with age, a message from Chen Wei-lin sent decades ago that Mercer had kept all these years. The letter said simply, "Some friendships are stronger than borders. Some trusts are stronger than time. Thank you, old friend, for proving that both are true." His funeral was private, classified even, held at Arlington, in the section with the unmarked graves. Sullivan spoke, Reeves attended. Faces Mercer had never met stood in respectful silence for a man whose name they would never publicly acknowledge. His headstone, like those of his colleagues, was unmarked. But 3 months after his burial, something changed. A small bronze plaque appeared at the base of his grave. No one knew who placed it there. No official record documented its installation. It read simply, Walter Eugene Mercer, 1934 to 2027, who emerged from the shadows when it mattered most, and taught us that some patterns never change. Only the people brave enough to recognize them. At NSA headquarters, in a corridor most employees never see, there's a memorial wall, stars carved in marble, each one representing an intelligence officer who gave their life in service. No names, just stars. 3 months after Mercer's death, 24 new stars were added. 23 for the Nightshade operatives who died in shadows. 1 for the man who spent 40 years honoring their memory. And at the base of the wall, a new inscription. They served in silence. They sacrificed without recognition. They are remembered by those who know. Every year, on the anniversary of the South China Sea extraction, intelligence officers gather at that wall. They don't speak publicly about what they're commemorating. They simply stand in silence, remembering the old man who walked through their checkpoint and changed everything. And somewhere, in classified archives that will never see daylight, the full story is preserved. The story of Operation Nightshade. The story of 47 ghosts who became the most effective intelligence network in American history, and the story of the last survivor who emerged from 60 years of shadows to save 12 lives and to ensure that his colleagues would finally be remembered. The security guards at NSA headquarters tell stories sometimes. About the morning an old man approached their checkpoint. No credentials, no appointment, just a name and a code word from a program that officially never existed. They tell how the Pentagon called, how the directors came running, how the entire apparatus of American intelligence mobilized for a 90-year-old man in a cardigan. The new guards don't believe it. The old guards just smile. Patterns, they say. Some patterns never change. And they go back to watching the checkpoint, waiting for the next impossible visitor, the next ghost who steps out of history, the next old man who proves that the greatest weapon in intelligence isn't technology or data or satellites. It's memory. It's trust. It's the courage to emerge from shadows when shadows are no longer enough. Maybe that's what service really means. Not the recognition or the medals or the public gratitude, but the willingness to disappear, to become no one, to carry secrets that can never be shared and burdens that can never be set down. And then, when it matters most, to step back into the light. History forgets the noise. It remembers the silence that followed. End.